Welcome to another Against the Grain audio blog production, Crop Circles and Cognitive Dissonance, Exploring the Depths of Existence, written by Gary King. But before we dive into that, here's a quick word from our esteemed sponsor.
Yeah, I just want to say, that ever since I heard about these crop circles, I've been fascinated. The farmer goes to bed and then bada bing, bada boom, there's a huge pattern in his field. I got to tell you, something funny's going on down there in Wilshire. So listen, I want you to pay close attention to this recording. It's very important to me. Oh, and if you haven't done it already, hit the subscribe button and ring the bell for Christ's sake.
Yes, thanks, Tony. Upon discovering the news that the recent formation at Wayland's Smithy was an exact copy of the logo used on the heading of The Circular, a magazine published by the Center for Crop Circle Studies, I was reminded of the term cognitive dissonance, often quoted by the late Michael Glickman. The term is, of course, a psychological one and refers to a theory first presented by Leon Festinger back in 1957. Essentially, it attempted to clarify the conditions that motivate individuals to change their opinions, attitudes, beliefs, or behaviors. Basically, cognitive dissonance happens when you hold two conflicting thoughts in your mind at the same time, like loving cows and hamburgers. As Michael was always keen to point out, one of the things about the crop circles is that they tend to lead us to a place where we can easily find ourselves experiencing cognitive dissonance. In other words, the formations often present situations which can really do your head in. But what if that's the intent? I can hear Michael saying, with that effervescent twinkle in his eye. If you've read Dr. Nick Kollerstrom's blog, which was published here on Against the Grain quite recently, you will, of course, be aware of the ongoing mystery of circles without a discernible center. This is one of those amazing facts about crop circles which Michael first brought to my attention many years ago, and one that I have repeatedly included in my presentations ever since. Most especially because not only is this largely overlooked detail simply miraculous, it's also ingenious and simple at the same time. Allow me to explain myself. When you look at a crop circle with untouched standing wheat at its center, then you can be completely assured that no one has walked out and stood there to be the fixed anchor point holding the rope, so that someone else could walk around the perimeter trampling down crop at the other end of it, some 200 feet or so away. If a person were to do this, it would always require trampling down and thus damaging the standing crop in order to get to the center point. And always keep in mind that once crop has been flattened, it can't be made to stand up again. So to be absolutely clear, if people had made it, there would have to be a track to a clearly defined center. The fact that there isn't one is miraculous. It's just that simple. As Nick said in his article, this would be impossible on paper, let alone over hundreds of feet in a wheat field. But if anyone thinks they can do this, then just show us. In other words, please provide us with very ordinary evidence to substantiate such an extraordinary claim. Getting back to Wayland's Smithy, we clearly have an immaculately laid out formation. However, the overhead images clearly show that there is no discernible center point. For many, that's case closed on the origin. It has to have come from an unknown non-human intelligence. But then the news comes in that the design is an exact replica of the logo taken from an old crop circle magazine. This is the exact moment when cognitive dissonance emerges. We experience extreme discomfort as our thoughts and emotions bounce between the possibility of two polar opposite explanations. Now, this is when Michael would say, "Calm down, dear. Take a deep breath and have a nice cup of tea." When psychologists were busy exploring this theory back in the day, they conducted extensive, repugnant experiments on rats. The poor old rats were given a metal bowl full of food, which had been electrified. Driven by hunger, the rat would step up to eat and get a nasty shock for his trouble, naturally causing him to recoil in extreme discomfort. Each time his increasing hunger drove him to try again, so the shock would send him reeling back. Over and over this would continue to go on, until eventually the rat would appear to come to an almost complete standstill. But upon closer examination, it could be seen that the rat was very imperceptibly rocking backward and forward. It turned out that the impulse to go towards the food and run away from the pain wasn't resolved one way or another in the poor rat's mind, and it ended up in this semi-frozen state, twitching back and forth with a manic stare on its face. In fact, my good friend and confidant John told me earlier that he was thrown into this very state of cognitive dissonance just yesterday. He's been avidly following the UAP hearings in the U.S., and after listening to testimony from what he considered to be highly credible witnesses, and also looking at very convincing video footage, he now feels comfortable that we do indeed have unknown craft flying around in our skies. Then he watched some CGI experts debunk a whole bunch of these videos, and he immediately felt his head was being bounced between two walls. It is exactly this type of headspace that is one of the main reasons why people don't stay around the crop circle scene for very long. Because sooner or later, cognitive dissonance comes up, and that's when the phenomenon really starts to stretch us. In my own experience, it's only by making space in these moments that we have the opportunity to gain more self-understanding. It's a bit like meditation, but not in the way that many people think about it. What I mean by that is that I've heard so many people tell me that they need to meditate in order to relax. But for me, meditation has rarely been very relaxing, because it's only when I try to stop and observe the machinations of my mind that I get to see how chaotic it is in there, with thoughts swirling around, driving my feelings this way and that. The truth is that sitting down quietly with your own thoughts and emotions is actually really bloody difficult. Given the ever-increasing madness of the world we all share, it's not surprising that for lots of people, being inside your own head, even for short periods of time, can be very difficult. Perhaps this is why so many people want to get out of it so much more these days. Because to actually sit and hold two opposing and contradictory thoughts at the same time, and then observe yourself during this process, can literally drive you mad. If we assume that Michael's hypothesis is correct, then logically, this raises the next hypothetical question. Why would an unknown non-human intelligence want us to go to such an uncomfortable place in our minds? Are they really just trying to do our heads in? The truth is that each of us hold dozens of conflicting thoughts such as these in our minds, but when they surface into our conscious awareness, very sophisticated systems of avoidance kick into action. Over the years, a lot of us develop all sorts of strategies and get really good at avoiding those hot potatoes. In fact, many of us have become so good at it that we very often don't even notice when we completely contradict ourselves. The truth is, most people prefer to live in ignorance. Now, if you're in any doubt about that, then try and take that ignorance away from them and see how they treat you. Several years ago, I read a wonderful book called Willful Blindness by a British author called Margaret Heffernan. In it, she quotes several spine-chilling examples of the lengths we humans can go to in order to deceive ourselves. It's both enlightening and disturbing at the same time, especially disturbing when it causes one to look in the mirror at our own inner contradictions. It doesn't take someone from the Vienna set to tell us that prolonged exposure to this sort of mindset is tortuous if not handled correctly. This is why several researchers, including myself, have always felt that the man-made explanation is a perfect way out for those who just can't stand the heat of this particular kitchen. In years past, we have had a great many beautiful designs imprinted into crop fields, and many of them without discernible centers. But there's no denying that the 2023 season has definitely pushed this aspect of the crop circle mystery right under our noses. Something else Michael said repeatedly was that we should also consider that we are dealing with two mysterious phenomena here. Phenomena A is the crop circles in the fields, whilst phenomena B is our reaction to them. So, how do you respond to this? What are your thoughts and feelings as a result of this latest development? Try and sit with it for a while if you can. You never know, you may learn something about yourself. Another consistent theme of the crop circle narrative has been the phrase, "we oppose deception," which has been repeated several times in a number of clever ways. I think that there's an interesting discussion to be had about why an unknown, non-human intelligence would want to perplex us in such a fashion. Is it a clever way to encourage us to look inside ourselves just a little bit deeper, but at the same time, provide us with a way out if it all gets too overwhelming? What do you think? Several years ago, I determined that the crop circles can be placed into 5 main categories, which are geometry, religious, philosophical symbols, insects and animals, astronomical symbols, and finally, those that are completely abstract. As both the categories of geometry and religious philosophical symbols fall under the headings of cosmology, consciousness, metaphysics, etc., then in my own research, this has caused me to spend a great deal of time considering the philosophical concept that compares God or the Creator to the center of a circle. I use the word creator here in place of the highly charged word God because what I'm proposing here is much more about cosmology and philosophy as opposed to religion. However, regardless of the actual word, this idea of associating the divine with a circle and its center has been a prominent theme in various religious, philosophical, and spiritual traditions. In higher levels of practice in yoga and tai chi, connecting with our physical center of gravity paves the way for moving toward a deeper understanding of our metaphysical or spiritual center. Yoga literally refers to yoking the mind to the source of divinity and is the process of intentional stopping of the spontaneous activity of the mind stuff. The word yoga itself is derived from a Sanskrit word meaning to yoke or to yoke or unite your being with the infinite, to Brahman. The concept of God being the center of a circle often symbolizes the idea of the divine unity, perfection, and harmony. In this metaphor, the circle represents the universe or existence, and God, as the center, is the mysterious source from which everything emanates. The circle's circumference represents the limits or boundaries of creation, while its center represents the divine essence from which all creation emerges and revolves around. The notion of God as the center is found in different religions and philosophical contexts, and it can be interpreted in various ways depending on one's beliefs and cultural background. For example, in Christian theology, God is often considered the center of creation and the source of all existence. God's divine will and providence are believed to guide and sustain everything in the universe. In Hindu philosophy, the concept of Brahman is often associated with the center of the cosmic circle. Brahman is considered the ultimate reality and the source from which everything arises. In Islamic thought, the concept of Tawhid emphasizes the oneness of God and the idea that everything is interconnected and dependent on God as the center. According to the philosophy of Plato, the One represents the ultimate source of reality and the center from which all forms and ideas emanate. In Taoist philosophy, the Tao is often compared to the center, representing the underlying principle which unifies and governs the universe. These are just a few examples. There are many other interpretations and variations of this idea in different belief systems. The concept of God as the center of a circle serves to convey the notion of a unified and harmonious cosmos with a divine presence that holds everything together. It also highlights the idea of interconnectedness and belief that everything is connected to the divine source. For me, there is a connection between the deep introspection caused by the aforementioned cognitive dissonance and the concept of know thyself. Know thyself is an aphorism that dates back to ancient Greece, often attributed to the philosopher Socrates. This idea is rooted in the philosophical tradition and has been a central theme in various cultures and belief systems throughout history. At first glance, the connection between God as the center of a circle and know thyself may not be immediately apparent. However, upon closer examination, there are some profound connections and insights that can be drawn. The concept of God as the center of a circle emphasizes unity and interconnectedness. Similarly, Know Thyself invites individuals to explore their own inner being and recognize their inherent connection to the larger universe or divine reality. Understanding oneself involves recognizing that we are a part of a greater whole, and our actions and choices can influence the world around us. Know Thyself is often interpreted as an invitation to explore one's own soul or inner self, seeking wisdom and understanding within. This inner journey can lead to a deeper connection with the divine or spiritual aspects of one's being. The concept of God as the center of a circle can be seen as an external representation of this inner journey, where the divine essence is recognized as the center of existence. And knowing oneself becomes a path to realizing that connection. The pursuit of self knowledge involves understanding our own thoughts, emotions, biases, and limitations. By doing so, we can transcend the ego and develop a more profound sense of self awareness and humility. This recognition of our own limitations can also lead to a greater recognition of a higher power, or divine presence beyond our individual selves. In my view, both concepts are connected to the idea of pursuing wisdom and virtue. Understanding one's place in the universe and recognizing the divine center can inspire individuals to live virtuously and align their actions with higher principles. Therefore, as the spiritual teachings tell us, exploring the relationship between God, Creator, as the center of a circle and knowing oneself can lead to a deeper sense of purpose and meaning in life. In summary, therefore, the concepts of God as the center of a circle and Know Thyself can be seen as complementary and interconnected. They both encourage individuals to explore their own inner being, seek wisdom and understanding, and recognize their place in the broader context of the universe and the divine. I'll conclude with the bake your noodle question. Could all of what I've just said have anything to do with mysterious crop circles with no centers? Oh, and I should mention that the voice you've been listening to is not Matthew McConaughey. It's an actor stroke impersonator whose voice has been filtered using the latest AI software.